Black Maid was fired, and framed then called her Korean Mafia husband, buy the company and ruin them. The trash bag felt heavier than 3 years of her life should. Maya Jefferson walked down the marble steps of the Whitfield estate, and behind her, laughter cracked through the morning air like a whip. Diane Whitfield didn't even bother lowering her voice. Bradley pointed at her back, like she was a joke that finally landed. Maya did not turn around. She lifted her phone, dialed one number, and pressed it to her ear, like it was the only thing left in the world that still belonged to her. "Do you, Yoon," she said, "buy the company." Silence on the line. Then his voice came through. Low, calm, almost bored, like she had just asked him to pick up milk on his way home. And after that, he said. Maya looked back one final time. She watched Bradley's finger still hanging in the air, pointed at her like a verdict. "Ruin every single one of them," she said. She hung up before he could answer. She did not need to hear it. She already knew it was done. 4 weeks earlier, Maya Jefferson was simply the woman who made the Whitfield estate run without anyone noticing how. Not because she was invisible, but because she made herself that way on purpose. To the family, she was the quiet housekeeper who arrived at 7 every morning and left the moment her shift ended, who never asked for more than what was owed to her, who kept her head down and her hands steady. What none of them knew was that every night Maya went home to a man whose name alone could empty a room. She had married into a world of quiet, absolute power, and she had locked the door behind her on purpose. She did not want anyone handing her anything because of who her husband was. She wanted her own 2 hands to be enough. That pride was the one thing about her life she refused to let him touch. She should have known that pride, in a house like the Whitfields, would eventually come with a price. The apartment she shared with Do-yoon Kang sat on the 40th floor of a building most people in the city could not even name. No gold, no marble, just glass and quiet, and a view that made the streets below look small and far away. Maya loved that about it. She loved that Do-yoon never filled their home with the kind of noise other powerful men mistook for meaning. Most mornings she woke before her alarm, and most mornings he was already up, standing by the window in a plain gray shirt, holding 2 cups of coffee like it was the only ritual that mattered to him. "You do not have to go in today," he said, one morning, setting her cup down beside her. "I want to," she said. "I like my work. I am good at it." He looked at her for a long moment, the kind of look that had nothing to do with doubt. "I know," he said. "That is exactly why I never ask you not to." That was the thing about Do-yoon that no one outside their home would ever understand. He never asked about her work, not because he didn't care, but because he understood something most husbands never figure out. The woman he loved was not an extension of him. She was Maya Jefferson, sharp enough to notice a number out of place before anyone else in the room even looked twice. She wanted her worth to come from what was in her hands, not from what was in his accounts. So every morning she kissed him at the door, took the bus 2 stops from the estate, and walked through the gates like any other woman earning her place, one careful day at a time. That separation, that wall she built with her own hands, was about to become the most dangerous thing she ever did. Because the less the Whitfields knew about who she really was, the easier it became for 3 very greedy people to believe she was an easy target. The Whitfield estate ran like a machine, dressed up in old money and good manners. Diane Whitfield collected admiration the way other people collected furniture, arranged carefully, displayed constantly. Her son Bradley wore his family name like a shortcut through every room he ever walked into. And somewhere quietly behind them stood Victor Lang, the family accountant, a man who smiled at everyone and trusted no one, mostly because he had given people plenty of reasons not to trust him back. Maya had built a reputation in that house as the one person who did not gossip, did not posture, and did not miss things. Which is exactly why, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Preston Cole, the estate manager, handed her a set of keys and a tired sigh. Victor's home office needs a deep clean before the quarterly meeting, he said. Nobody's touched half those files in years. Maya took the keys without complaint. She liked tasks other people found boring. Papers did not smile in her face and talk about her the second she left the room, so she went in, and she cleaned, careful and quiet, the way she did everything. And on the second night, something did not sit right. A ledger, left open on the edge of the desk, the kind of mistake a careful man does not usually make. She almost looked away. Almost. But something in her, the same instinct that made her double-check every surface twice, made her stop and read the numbers instead of past them. Small transfers, time-stamped oddly, routed through an account that should have been closed years ago. She told herself it was nothing. She went back the next night anyway. By the fourth night, nothing was nothing anymore. The transfers were not small mistakes, they were a pattern, careful and deliberate, moving money out of the family trust and into accounts dressed up to look like nothing at all. She sat there at 11 at night, the office silent around her, staring at numbers that could end 3 very comfortable lives. She did not know it yet, but she had just become the biggest threat in that house, and someone had already started to notice. Victor Lang did not build a career out of being careless. He noticed the office door slightly ajar when it should have been locked. He noticed a folder returned to the wrong drawer. He told himself it was nothing, until he checked the small camera hidden above his bookshelf, the one even Preston did not know about, and his stomach dropped straight through the floor. There she was, time-stamped and undeniable, going through files that were never meant to be touched by anyone holding a duster instead of a law degree. He did not panic where anyone could see him. That was not his style. He smiled through dinner that night, complimented Diane's new curtains, laughed at Bradley's joke about golf. Then, the moment the house went quiet, he made 2 phone calls. They met in the estate's old wine cellar an hour later, the one room in the house with no cameras at all, which was exactly why Victor chose it. "She knows," Victor said. No greeting, no warm-up, just the words that dropped the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. Diane's jaw tightened. "Knows what, exactly?" "Say it plain, Victor." Bradley's voice cracked slightly. "She has been in my files for days. I checked. Give her a week and she will have everything, every transfer, every signature. She will hand it straight to the board, or worse, straight to the police." Silence pressed down on the room like a hand on the chest. None of them thought about turning themselves in. None of them thought about the one decent thing that might have saved them from everything that came next. They started thinking instead about how to get rid of her. "She is careful," Diane said slowly, thinking out loud. "Too careful. If we fire her outright with what she already knows, she will go over our heads before we can stop her." "Then we do not wait for her to move first," Victor said, voice cold and calm now, the panic replaced by something far more dangerous. "We make it look like she did this. All of it." Bradley looked up, almost laughing in disbelief. "You want to frame the maid?" "I want," Victor said, leaning forward, "to make it so airtight that by the time she opens her mouth to defend herself, nobody in this house will believe a single word." Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Victor reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a spare set of keys to the estate's security room, the kind of access that should never have existed outside his own hands, but absolutely did if you knew the right locksmith. They had been keeping it just in case. Tonight, in case had finally arrived. They spent the next 2 hours planning every detail, every camera angle, every piece of jewelry they would need to move. Across the city, completely unaware, Maya was closing her laptop, satisfied with the progress she had made, thinking she still had time. She did not. The estate had a particular kind of stillness after midnight, the kind where even the security guard at the gate had started nodding off in his chair. That was exactly when they moved. Victor slipped into Maya's small staff locker room at 12:14 in the morning, a diamond bracelet from Diane's jewelry box already wrapped in a cloth in his pocket. He tucked it beneath a folded uniform at the back of her locker, careful, precise, practiced. Then he walked to the security room and, using access he was never supposed to have alone, adjusted the timestamp on 2 hours of footage, just enough to place a blurry, hooded figure near the study safe at the exact hour Maya had actually been asleep 3 miles away, beside her husband, completely unaware that her entire life was about to be rewritten while she dreamed. At 8:45 the next morning, Preston Cole knocked on the staff room door. "Maya," he said, voice flat, "Mrs. Whitfield needs to see you in the study. Now." The study smelled like old leather and money that never had to explain itself. Diane sat behind the desk like she was already bored of the conversation before it started. Bradley stood by the window, arms crossed, refusing to look at her directly. Victor stood near the safe, hands folded, his face arranged into something that almost looked like sympathy. "Sit down, Maya," Diane said. Maya remained standing. "I'll stand." Diane slid a small velvet box across the desk and opened it. "Empty. This bracelet went missing from my room 3 nights ago," she said. "It was found this morning in your locker." Maya felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her, though her face gave away nothing. "I have never touched your jewelry box, Mrs. Whitfield." "We have security footage," Victor said, sliding a printed still across the desk. Grainy, dim, a hooded figure near the study safe at 12:14 in the morning. "That is not me," Maya said, her voice steady despite the cold spreading up her spine. "I was home, asleep. You can check my address, check the distance, check anything you want. The timestamp matches the exact hour your access badge was last used to enter this wing," Victor said smoothly. "It is all documented." Maya's mind raced through every possibility and landed on none of them, because she knew, with everything in her, that she had been 3 miles away, in bed beside her husband. But knowing something and proving it in a room built entirely against her were 2 very different battles. "I want someone in this room who is not one of you," she said. "A witness, someone neutral." "That will not be necessary," Diane said, closing the velvet box with a soft, final click. "This is a private household matter, not a courtroom." "That is exactly the problem," Maya said, her voice rising now, the calm finally cracking at the edges. "You are the judge and the jury and the thief, all standing in the same room." Diane's expression did not move. "Effective immediately, your employment here is terminated. Preston will escort you to collect your things." Maya stood there for a moment that stretched longer than it should have. 3 years of scrubbed floors and folded linens, and remembering exactly how everyone in that house liked their coffee. 3 years of being told she was appreciated, dissolving into nothing over a bracelet she had never even seen before that morning. "You are making a mistake," she said quietly, straightening her spine. "A very serious one." Bradley finally looked at her, and there was nothing behind his eyes but relief that this was almost over. "Preston is waiting outside," he said. She walked out of that study with her chin level and her hands perfectly still, because the last thing she planned to give any of them was the satisfaction of watching her come apart. Preston was waiting by the staff room, eyes fixed somewhere past her shoulder, unwilling to meet her gaze. She said nothing to him. She simply began gathering the little that was hers. A cheap framed photo from a trip she and Do-Yun had taken to Jeju, a small potted plant she had somehow kept alive through 3 brutal winters, a drawer of pens nobody else would ever miss. Word moves fast in a house full of people with nothing better to do. By the time she reached the second drawer, she could feel the shift in the air, conversations dying mid-sentence as she passed, eyes flicking toward her and then quickly away, as if whatever had happened to her might be contagious. And then there was Rosa Delgado, who worked the kitchen 2 floors down, who Maya had quietly taught how to read a paycheck stub without being cheated out of overtime, who had never once called it mentoring, just kindness offered plainly. Rosa appeared at the edge of the staff room, arms wrapped around herself, eyes already red. She leaned in close, voice barely above a whisper, glancing once toward the study door to make sure it was still shut. "I know you didn't do this," she said. That was it. 4 words, but something in Maya's chest loosened just slightly, enough to breathe for the first time since Preston had knocked on the door that morning. "Thank you," Maya whispered back, and she meant it more than Rosa would ever fully understand. Preston cleared his throat gently, almost apologetically, as if even he understood how wrong the whole thing felt, underneath all his careful neutrality. Maya picked up the trash bag holding what remained of 3 years of her life, and walked toward the front doors, her shoulders square, her steps even. Behind her, near the top of the staircase, Diane, Bradley, and Victor were already watching, already smiling, already celebrating a war they believed was over before it had even started. The front doors opened onto the marble steps. Preston walked 2 paces behind her the whole way, silent, almost regretful. Maya stepped through the doors and out into the morning air, and behind her, the doors clicked shut with a heavy, final sound. 3 years in that house, and she had not even been trusted to walk back through them. The trash bag felt heavier than her pride ever had. Maya Jefferson walked down the marble steps of the Whitfield estate with her career reduced to something she could carry in one arm. A cheap photo, a stubborn little plant, 3 years folded into nothing. Behind her, the laughter started. Diane did not bother lowering her voice. Bradley pointed at her back, like she was a punchline he had been waiting all week to land. 2 people, dressed like they owned the world, standing on the steps of a house that had never really been theirs to protect. Maya did not turn around. She lifted her phone, dialed one number, and pressed it to her ear like it was the only thing left in the world that still belonged to her. "Du Yun," she said. "Buy the company." A pause. Then his voice came through, low, calm, almost bored, like she had just asked him to pick something up on his way home. "And after that," he said. She looked back, one final time, watching Bradley's finger still hanging in the air, pointed at her spine, like a verdict already passed. "Ruin every single one of them," she said. She hung up before he could answer. She did not need to. She already knew it was done. And here is what none of them understood, standing there on those steps, feeling like they had won something. They believed they had just watched a woman lose everything. What they had actually done was wake something up, because 40 minutes later, in a private office on the top floor of a building none of them had ever heard of, Kang set down his phone, looked at the 3 people already seated at his table, and said one sentence that started the countdown on everything that was coming for them. Find out everything about the Whitfield family tonight. That's the end of the first section, just over 2,000 words. Let me know if this is approved, and I'll move on to the final 3,000-word part, covering the retaliation, the takedown, and the confrontation.